Adam, alcoholic.
Hey, Adam.
Kind of qualify a little bit before we jump into some of the literature. I started drinking and doing drugs, pharmaceuticals, very, very young age, 14, 15. It was just to escape my head, man, quiet the noise, always have this like overactive thinking, analyzing, skeptical brain, that just eats at me, like always working, always thinking, producing anxiety type deal. Never really had trouble making friends, but I had trouble like belonging, feeling like I had them, or feeling like at any minute it could change. I don't even know, like a pending doom type deal, And when I get loaded, like it would quiet down and I could just be present, That was like just being present and hanging out, like that was like gold, Came very rarely. And at the beginning, like the getting loaded did that for me, It's not like I didn't start off blackout drunk, or not coming home for days on end. Like it started very subtle, a couple times a week, As time God went along, got a little older, started making more money, more disposable income, more into girls, less into the books and schoolwork and sports, everything just progressed, and it started a few nights a week, getting really loaded, and then a couple days in a row, and then I'm feeling it when I'm done, like just feeling that weird spacey, sick kind of feeling. And it didn't even click that it was the drugs and alcohol. But as kept going forward, and I started selecting friends. Like all the friends that I had were kind of tolerated my getting loaded, and a lot of them didn't do it too. But I didn't have any square friends anymore. I didn't have any normie friends. I knew people, but the people that I hung out with were starting to be like me, less time in the world and more time like hiding and going to the gas station with my brother's ID at midnight and sneaking out of the house and getting freaking Smirnoff bottles of beer or whatever they were, just like just anything I could get, man. And part of that was the sneakiness, like it was a rush. And there was a time where I couldn't really tell you when, but there's a time where I started needing it more and more. The more bridges I burned, the further I got like from the lifestyle I liked. I grew up playing sports and working and enjoying life and lots of outdoors type things. Further I got away from that, the more loaded I had to stay. I had stayed buzzed at that point. It was probably 17, 18 years old. I was staying always at least slightly cocked, and then only to get more loaded at nighttime, and kind of just did it all over again. And at that point, there wasn't a lot of consequences. Like I lost friends, my friends that I had that from school days and whatnot. Like their parents were very protective and kind of, rolled differently. And I wasn't allowed to hang out with them anymore type deal, But it was all good because I had what I needed, But that kind of just led me to need to get more loaded. I needed to stay this way so I didn't have to feel what I felt about myself, And when I would say about 20 years old, right, we'd have big ragers at the house, a lot of garage partying, like I wasn't into the fancy places. It was the dive bars and the garage partying and the backyards and, the spots in the woods. And I remember waking up one day. I always held a job, but I waking up one day and I had to be at work. It was like 10 a.m. I had to be at work at noon. working at a restaurant, you know, and I was hungover, like terribly hungover, and there was one beer left, which there was never a beer left. So I cracked open the beer and realized very quickly that, you know, all you had to do was have a beer in the morning and you weren't hungover anymore, you know. But then I had to keep that going. Like, I couldn't just stop drinking because then I would crash. So then you know, we had to constantly up the ante, and a shot here and then 2 shots an hour and 3, you know what I mean? It just progressed, man, and really started to be a problem with even my party friends. You know, they were like, has he been drinking again? I would hear them talking as they're rolling up, and I'm at the park already, sitting on the picnic table, you know, and thought I hit all the cans that I already drank, so they'd just see me with one, you know, but they're like, oh, is he drinking again? And I remember thinking, like, dude, I'm not, you know, like, I ain't fighting, I ain't getting all crazy, like, what's the problem? And I, you know, still don't really know what the problem was, but you know, like, they saw it in me, and I didn't, it was, like I said, it was my lifeline, man. Like, I ain't doing this thing sober, like, I ain't just hanging out, you know. Life was about making money to get loaded, or spending the money on choosing what I wanted to get loaded with, you know, and then wash, rinse, repeat, you know. And that's when things really started to spiral, you know. Not really, I did my fair share of drinking, but more of a drug addict, I would say. You know, pharmaceuticals were my thing, man. And you know, when the pharmacy ran out, we turned to the streets, and that's really, it's always like the next level down, right? You know, and it's when I really started hanging out with people that weren't going anywhere. Like, none of them had jobs. None of them, you know, there was just hustles. We were pulling licks. We were doing jobs, man. And you know, that's when the trouble really started, you know, and that's when the constant having to be fully loaded and completely numbed out was like, it was mandatory because of the life I was living, man. You know, I was able to catch some charges, you know. Now I caught some charges, just freaking junkie stunts, dude. Like, that was it, just stealing stuff, you know. I caught some charges and ended up got some jail time, you know. And at first it was jail time and 6-month rehab, 4 years paper. This was in West Palm, and you know, as I did the jail time, you know, and that was the most sober I had been in since, you know, like 13 years old, when I was the longest I've ever been sober. And I remember getting out, and like, my family was mad, but they were still talking to me, you know, and getting out and going to treatment, you know. It was Carp, right, 45th Street, West Palm, and wasn't really the classiest joint. We've definitely been into nicer ones since then, but it was the real deal. Like, you either you got with the program or you ended up on the street, you know. And I remember wanting it so bad, you know, really wanting it, and didn't get a sponsor. You know, I went to meetings because we had to, and it was you know, classes and stuff all day long, and then your smoke break, and then more classes and lunch, you know, and you know the deal. And I felt safe, right? Like, it was working, but I wasn't doing anything, but all of the supervision was helping me, you know. Then there was after 4 months in there, it was 2 months like on the halfway house side, right? So you still lived on the property, then you went and got a job, and you came back every night and whatnot. So there was a little more freedom, and I remember I almost graduated before I ended up smoking. Like, everybody was getting loaded in the halfway house side, and I remember on the bus ride, we had taken the bus back to the treatment center, and I remember hitting this, it was like Spice or something, you know, some fake stuff, and getting loaded, and that was it, man. Like, it was I graduated from the thing, and, you know, had my job and got an apartment and whatnot, but it just bounced around, and I remember feeling so miserable, man. Just trying my best not to lose it, still smoking, that spice stuff, and just miserable. So I stopped for a little while and got a sponsor, right? There's this girl. So I stopped for a little while and got this sponsor, because the girl she was sober, and it's like, all right, let's do this deal, and wasn't willing to look at the God part of it, right? I had some prejudices, and got the sponsor, and I worked the steps, half-heartedly, and then within a year and a half, I was back at it, man, and I was right there on the streets, and I was right there in West Palm, so everything was easy to find, man. And meanwhile, I'm on paper, like pending quite a few years, hanging over my head, and it's the insanity really turns up when I'm ducking the PO and scared of the P tests and everything. It was real, man. And it was right back to that I have to get loaded to continue to live how I'm living type deal, right? Like mandatory. And so there's a point where loaded, ended up checking myself in, Baker acting myself to get off of it, right? It's like, this is like edge of homelessness, lost my job, almost went to jail. PO didn't find out somehow. But going in, and it's like, I have to stop this, dude. I have to. And the went into the Baker Act. It was like, the little 72-hour deal. And thinking like, dude, once I get right, I'm going to go back out there, and I'm going to, I know people in town, I'm going to get a job, and we're going to do the deal, right? Like, I'm going to stay sober. And got back out by before sundown, man. And fully loaded again, nodding out, man, just terrible. And just that, what Corey read about the incomparable demoralization, like, all those times where I sat, usually locked up or something, but I sat sober and thinking about all the reasons why I didn't want to do it anymore. Looking at my track record of, dude, this is your pattern. Like, you cannot do this. The life that you're living is making it worse. But all the times that I sat there thinking of that and then went back out and got loaded, just made it worse. It made it more hopeless, man. The depression and the just feeling like I'm trapped, feeling like I can't escape, Meanwhile, the family's even more pissed every single time, the broken promises, that whole deal. I'm good. I'm not going to do it anymore, Send me $20. They, all that stuff, like, it was, it just made it harder on them too, And that went on. I always say it took me 7 years to get off of 4 years paper. Like, that, it went on. Violation after violation, and there was a time where the judge was done, and he's like, I knew I was going up the road, right? But it was just taking forever. Like, I was living over in this coast, but all my court dates, they were on the East Coast, right? And every time I'd go over there, I didn't have a car, so I'd bum a ride to the train station and take the train, and every time it's like, tell my boss, I'm probably not coming back, man. Like, this is what's going on. And then every time it's like, well, re-adjourn in 30 days. I'm like, damn, that whole time getting loaded, like, there was no stopping at that point. Like, the progression of it was set in. My choices in life were making it worse, harder on myself. And I never did the deal. Like, I never fully surrendered. I never trusted a higher power, to know that there was hope, to know that there was a chance of change, as long as I worked it. So it was just like trying not to get time added to my sentence. That was really it, man. Trying not to get busted for a new crime so I didn't have to do more time, until I went up the road, man. And at that point, it was, by the time I got sentenced, I was ready. Like, I was completely wiped out. 135, 140 pounds, just skin and bones and no soul. Like, really, not to be dramatic, like just bankrupt, man, in every single way. No friends, no family, even my best plugs weren't trying to see me, you know, like, and I wasn't trying to see a lot of them either, you know, and I remember going thinking like, this is it, you know, like I'm not coming out of here, you know, like, let alone that was just how I saw everything. Everything was like, just wait until the day I died, pretty much, man. Just hopeless, bro. And got in and kept doing my thing. It was just a new pound, new hustle, man. For a year, that's how it was, you know. I couldn't even get a letter from my family, you know. Well, that's not true. I got a letter when I first got in, and it was just like, basically, we'll see you when you get out. Like, I'm not even trying, they aren't trying to invest any time or energy or emotion or anything, you know, in me anymore. That's the place that I took them. That's the place my choices of chasing this disease, man, of getting loaded. That's where it not only took me, but it took my family, you know, and that's not how we were meant to be, you know. That's not how, when growing up like that wasn't really our deal, man. We were a very close-knit family. So, you know, with that, it's kind of, one would think like, hey, it's kind of undeniable. You have a freaking problem. Like, do the deal, you know. I still needed some more convincing, you know. It was like I said, it was about a year, and I remember sitting in the box again. Stupid stuff, bro. Like, I stole, like, the CO weighed it out. It was like 2.7 pounds of peanut butter from the kitchen, you know, like, just ridiculous, dude. Like, what are you doing? Let alone how you going to get that back to the pod, you know? Just whatever I could do to hustle something up, you know, get a cigarette or get whatever, you know, food, because I wasn't getting any canteen, you know. And I remember sitting in the box, bro, and it's like, every time I got out of treatment or a jail stint, like, things would go good for a little bit and I would pick up, or, you know, I would get distracted by, hey, I need to buy this and buy that, or, hey, you know, this girl, that girl, and stop focusing on trying to better my life, you know, or even half-ass the program. Like, it was just straight off, man, and I would always wind up in the same places. And even when I was locked up, I get released to a new pod and chasing the same things, you know, still on a hustle, and it would lead me back to the same stuff, like a new people, new place, new hustle, same problems for Adam, man. And I remember I was 30 years old, and I finally saw it. Like, I saw it, you know. It's like, I got to do something different, bro. I got to do something different. And I remember it clicking. Like, I've never just tried to surrender. I never have. Like, there's always reservations. There's always these ideas. Well, if I could do this, you know, if I make these couple moves and get my money right, and then I can go over here and just lay low, keep my head down and work. You know, like, there was always something that I thought I could shake this deal. And you know, doing that in lockup, right? Started going to AA meetings, started listening again, you know, and trying to learn stuff. And again, they were talking about the stuff that I heard when I was on the streets over here, going to court-ordered meetings, and the same stuff a lot of the guys in this room and around this town that they were talking about, you know. It's the same, just the steps, right? The program, the fellowship, surrendering, like these types of things. The heavy stuff that was in the readings before the meeting started, right? This was what they were talking about, man. And it started to click finally, you know. It started to make sense. And I believe it was that brokenness, you know, that hopelessness that made my ears finally be able to hear. But with that, I want to get into some readings. And I don't know if we have books, but if you're following along, it's on page 30. It's the bottom paragraph, we alcoholics, right? And it's a little description, man. This is when the guys that I knew in prison and in these streets over here, bro, that are in these rooms, this is what they were talking about. These are the type of people that they were, and they could keep their job. You know, they could keep their car. They could keep the girl around. They kept the house. You know, they were consistently in their kids' lives. Like, I couldn't keep anything. You know what I mean? Like, I could build it back up and then just to lose it again. And they were talking about the same things. And you know, just what I was describing here on page 30, right? Bottom, the book describes it too. This is why I want to read it. It says, we alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking or drug using, right? We know that no real alcoholic or addict ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, nailed me between the eyes, right? Usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control. That was me. So what I just told you guys, right? Which led to, in time, to a pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced that that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness, which mine was definitely progressive, right? Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. That sucks, right? That's a sucky thing to read. But when at that point, like, it was clicking. It was like, all right, you make sense. Keep talking. You know, like, you had to prove yourself. It says, we are like men who have lost their legs, never to grow new ones. Neither does it appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. I've been through treatments. I've been through those anger management programs and the parenting you know, like, I've been through all these programs, drug awareness, alcohol prevention, like all these things. And it never worked. Like, I couldn't go out there and do dope like a normal man, if normal men do dope. You know what I mean? Like, it was like I couldn't do it. This was obviously me. It says, we have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there was brief recovery followed by still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic, right? That was me, man. And it's stuff like this in the books that I've been over the books, right? When I was chasing that girl, I was doing the program to get the girl, like, I didn't even hear this stuff, you know? But once I reached that point in that damn box, it's like it started clicking. Next page, we're going to kick it back to 25, right? Last paragraph on 25. It says, if you are as seriously alcoholic or an addict as we were, we believe there is no middle-of-the-road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. That was it, dude. And if we had passed into a region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives, right? I had passed through that region. The judge, the thought of going to prison, right? The feeling of knowing that I'm losing my family, like they are done with me because of my choices. Like there was no human aid, man. We had but two alternatives at that point. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out our consciousness of our intolerable situation the best we could, right? That was it. That's what I thought was the rest of my life before I found this deal, right? Said, but there's another one, right? And the other, to accept spiritual help. Very foreign, sounds terrible, but okay. You had my attention this far, like keep talking, you know. This we did because we honestly wanted to, and we were willing to make an effort. Wasn't quite there yet, but they had me sold that they were like me and that their lives had changed. They had the DOC numbers. They had the track marks. Like they had the things that, you know, like it made it apparent they lived like I lived and they got better, man. So next we're 46 on dropping it down to 46. What do we do? I'm sorry, 45, right? Page 45, second paragraph, it says, so what is the problem, right? We have to figure out, I had to be told what my problem was before I could be given the solution and accept the solution, right? So it wasn't just obviously drugs and alcohol are your problem, but what makes me keep doing this? And page 45 on the second paragraph reads that lack of power was my dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, but where and how are we to find this power, right? I could get behind that a lack of power was my dilemma. Like, I knew that because all the willpower in the world, and dude, I can be very determined and ambitious in many ways, man. I got some motivation to do many big things, right? I pulled myself out of the gutter a couple times, only to not really get out of it. I was just standing in it, and to fall back down in it again. But I was powerless over this thing. That I knew, right? It says, well, that's exactly what this book is about. It's about how we find this power, right? Its main object is to enable us to find a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. Freaking awesome. All right, I'm back on board with you. Like we're good because I can't deny the things you're talking about. So now we'll go to 46, right? Second and third paragraph. Middle of second, actually. It says, we found that as soon as we were able to lay aside our prejudice and express even the willingness to believe that a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results. So my deal here was, like I said, I had friends that their parents were pretty strict. Like, I grew up in a Baptist like surrounding, right? And they had a lot of rules, right? They had a lot of rules. The God that was presented to me, which I was running from, like hellfire, brimstone, like that old Southern Baptist you see in the movies and your grandparents, you know what I mean? Like that deal, man. Down to strike you down with lightning for sinning, this type of deal. That was my conception of God, right? And I had a lot of prejudices, Like I said, my first run through chasing, to get the girl doing this deal was I wasn't willing to look at the God part. Like, there was a couple characteristics that I needed for my conception of God, and my sponsor was cool with that. But I left it at that. It did not grow. I didn't try to really have a conscious contact with him, But this is where I struggled, right? And the reading goes on. It says, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God, much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. We found our own conception. However inadequate, it was sufficient enough to make the approach to effect a contact with him, right? What I've learned looking back, right? What it finally took, and there's a few white chips between then and now, okay? So what I found is I was overthinking it. That analyzing brain, that figuring it out brain, like, it had to make sense. The numbers had to add up. I had to be cool with it, in order to proceed. And what I found was I can complicate the hell out of something very, very simple, man. And I didn't need to understand it. That was me. That was the me side of it. What I needed to do was just surrender, right? My understanding was, what I surrendered to was the fact that what worked for you could work for me. That's what I ended up surrendering to. It wasn't the God of my childhood. It wasn't this or that. Like, I still had my prejudices against the God of my childhood, But I was willing to surrender to just a power greater than me, that there is something out there that could help me, because there's something that helped you, and you have the track record in your life to prove that, hey, you're not the dude you used to be, like that was it, man. And that surrender part, that is exactly what was needed, right? skipping to page 50. Oh, wait. Actually, 47, middle of 47, real quick. It says, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe, or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. This book, the 100 that wrote this book is telling you at this point, if you can say that, you're willing to believe that there's something that can help you, you back that up with some work, like, you're on your way, right? That's some big stuff, because these were real alcoholics, man. Now we're going to go to page 50. This is the last little part that I got to read. And this is the juice right here. This is some good stuff. Bottom paragraph of page 50. It says, as a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. You know, the numbers had to add up. So I could get behind this. It had to add up. Let's look at that record, bro. Like, show me. It says, you know, when this book was written, they wrote how here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed, right? Meaning they're in their sin. They're living their life. They're getting loaded. They're all the stuff, right? They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, took a certain attitude toward that power, and do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. That's pretty big, bro, because nothing changed me at this point. In the face of collapse and despair, right, when in our worst moments, in the face of total failure of their human resources, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. How can you not get behind that, right? Like, those things were foreign to me. But peace, power, happiness, right? A sense of direction, that's where it's at, man. It flowed into them. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements, right? So this deal, you know, it's worked for many people, man. Some people, as I see it, like some people who were worse off than me, you know, going up the road really isn't that bad. Like, it's not something you want to do, but living on the streets for years on end, you know, like, that's pretty rough. You know, I've had worse times than I did in prison, you know, but to come out of that, man, and to find hope in this deal, right? To meet guys that are having fun in life. You know, there's guys around here, there's guys in this room, like, they have freaking fun, man, doing this thing. It's not like, oh, I got to go to meetings and sit up straight and be a loser. And, you know, like, still go out, still have fun, still can date, still, you know, do all the things that normal people can do. I find that I can do more than I used to do when I was getting loaded, you know, like, I have the resources, I have the time, I have the mind to do it, right? I have the power to do it. Life is fun, man. It's nothing like I would have imagined, you know? Like, so I can, like, before I just wanted to not hurt people, kind of spend some holidays on, you know, with my family and not writing letters to them, you know? But it's way better than that, dude. Like, way better. The life that I have, like, I know it's cliche, but the life I have is better than I imagined it, man. And I'm going through some crap right now in life, you know, but I have peace. That peace has flown into me, you know. Usefulness, direction. I navigating some pretty heavy things the last few days, and I have supports. I have a sponsor that I call on. It's like, hey, this is going on. What do I do? You know, like, this is how I feel about it. Like, this is what I'm thinking. How do I say this in a loving way, you know? And I get direction, you know? Pray through my day, and I get direction on how to conduct myself so I don't just reap consequences, you know, so I can sleep at night. It's real, man. I'm not going to drag on and on. I'd love to hear some of what y'all have to share, but I'll end with this quote, right? It's by C.S. Lewis. You don't know C.S. Lewis. He was a part of the Oxford groups, right, where AA stemmed from, where the big book we're reading, the same deal, right? And it says we don't come to God as bad people trying to be good people, right? It's not me just trying to be over here, don't be a scumbag, like just do good things, don't go to jail, don't pick up. We don't come to God as bad people trying to become good people. We come as rebels laying down our arms, And the rebels back, I don't know if you've seen any Westerns, but the rebels live by their guns, dude. My way of life had to be surrendered. I had to lay it down, pick up a new way of life, right? And I like that to sum it up, because that describes my story, man, my experience with this deal. And as soon as I was able to do that, like the literature said, everything changed, man. But thank you for letting me share.